everybody, Fred the Pirate here, and I am here to do a review for the movie Iron Man 3 starring Robert Downey Jr., which is obviously produced in connection with Disney and Marvel Studio. So I actually went and saw Iron Man 3 this Saturday afternoon. And I went and saw that with my brother. So me and him went to obviously the theaters to watch that. So I'm going to give my thoughts on the movie, and I have to say, I'll do a non-spoiler and a spoiler version of the movie. So I have to say, overall, I thought it was a good movie. It was very entertaining. I have to say, and I don't think this is too spoilers because I'm not going to get into anything specific. Like when I do, I'll let you know when the spoiler part of the review starts. So for those who haven't seen the movie but want to, I'll let you know when the spoiler section happens so you can get out of here and not get spoiled. But before we get too far into this thing, I just want to remind people, as far as the comment section goes, to not have too many spoilers in the comment section, for people who, haven't watched the movie yet. So with that said, I have to say the trailer for the movie is actually kind of is rather misleading to what actually happens in the movie. The thing is the trailer does a good job of hyping up the movie and selling it to you, which is obviously what trailers are supposed to do. But it really takes a lot of the events that are shown in the trailer, like all of the events that you see in the movie happen, but the trailer takes them completely out of context to how they actually happen in the movie. And the way those events are connected to each other and are interconnected in the film is not at all the way you would think it would be. And I have to say, the trailer for the movie makes it seem like this movie is going to have a really dark, really serious feel to it. And I have to say that's not the feel of the movie. And I just have to say if you go in there expecting it to be dark and edgy and serious, that you're gonna be disappointed. And I watched a couple reviews from people who've seen the films, and I think a lot of them kind of felt a little disappointed with the movie because, again, because when they went in there expecting that the trailer was setting up the movie to be dark and serious and have this really serious tone to it, and the movie doesn't. Like, the movie has, has a very light, and at times comedic tone to it. I mean, there certainly are some serious moments, and there's probably one moment in the movie there's a couple moments in the movie that are rather serious, but the movie definitely is not at all as serious as the trailer would lead you to believe. And and honestly, that kind of annoys me because, I know trailers are supposed to sell you the movie, but it just seems like they could at least make sure that the trailers don't take everything out of context. Because the thing is, if you're gonna sell somebody on something, at least, sell them on what you're actually selling, And the thing is I think, trailers, can hurt more than they can help in certain situations, especially if they're really misleading. And honestly, I think that Iron Man 3's trailer is probably going to end up hurting it more than helping it, because the trailer, frankly, is quite misleading to what actually is going on in the movies. And what, so I'm just going to say this, like, for people who haven't seen the movie but want to, like, the trailer definitely really kind of just doesn't have a lot to do with the movie. I will admit, like, everything that, like I said before, like, everything that's shown in the trailer happens. But the trailer takes everything that you see in it and that happens in the movie, and just takes all of those events that it shows you and takes them completely out of context to the way they happen. Um, so, and so stuff like definitely doesn't happen the way you would expect it. And like in the events you show that are shown in the trailer, like they don't happen in the way that you expect them to happen based on what the trailer showed. So just be mindful of that. So I think with that said, again, like I felt that the movie was really nice. It was an enjoyable movie. There was a lot of, it was very, very entertaining as a movie. Uh, and I think the thing is, and especially like if you're somebody and you, have a younger family member with you, like you have a child in your family who happens to be a big fan of the Iron Man movies, not a little kid, but like a child who's, probably 10 or 11 or older. Um, but not necessarily an older teenager. I think that they'll really enjoy these movies. Um, the thing is, I think this movie is definitely really great for people who are just casual movie fans. Like people, like if you really like summer blockbusters and you want to have just a good time at the movie theater, it's definitely a really good movie for that. I think as far as comic book movies go, and as far as an adaptation of, comic book source materials and things that go on to it, I didn't quite do so well in that regards. It's an entertaining movie, but again, as far as the comic book stuff goes, didn't quite do that so well. So I think hardcore comic book fans, I don't think you'll be quite so pleased with this movie. I think if you're, now the thing um, like I don't read comic books, and I'm not super duper familiar with the Marvel universe, particularly. I'm quite a bit more familiar with the DC universe, but I have to say, as just an average person, who just who came in to see Iron Man because I liked the other Marvel movies. It was certainly again a good summer box office movie. Definitely very entertaining. So, and obviously, the plot of the movie is that Tony Stark has to deal with the actions of the terrorist known as the Mandarin, and he has to deal with his plot and what's going on with what the Mandarin's planning. So that's without giving anything away, that's the plot of the movie. So again, a very entertaining summer box office movie. Not so awesome as a comic book movie, and that mainly has to do with what happens, without giving too much, what you would expect to happen with the Mandarin doesn't quite happen. So the way you expect things would go, really, it doesn't go that way. And like I said, I think that probably has a whole lot to do with the way the trailer set stuff up. Um, so I think again I have to say kind of concluding the non-spoilery part of the review. If you're an average Joe on the street and you've liked the Marvel movies so far, or you just want to see a cool summer box office action movie with lots of special effects and a little bit of comedy, this is definitely going to be a great movie for you. If you're a hardcore Marvel comic book fan and you were expecting a dark, serious movie, you're going to end up being disappointed. So, and that's kind of a bad thing. I have to say, this definitely isn't going to be a movie like The Dark Knight, where it pleases both comic book fans and non-comic book fans, and it's certainly not going to be like the Avengers, which did the same thing. Um, I guess for better or worse, this is definitely a movie for non-comic book fans. That this is definitely going to be a movie that's going to be liked by the average person. And I think we'll have to see whether or not that works out. Um, so I'm certainly going to be interested in seeing the long-term ramifications of this movie, because I, I, I really don't think that hardcore fans are gonna like this movie. And although honestly, it seemed by the decisions that the movie made, that I don't know if the studio's necessarily super concerned about that. And that I think that this is definitely the movie that they're making, I guess, probably more for, cash grab reasons. That this is the movie that they're, hoping to make a lot of money with, and to get average people. And if they don't get the geek audience, that I don't know if they're quite as concerned as that. Hopefully, um, the other Marvel Phase 2 movies will do that. Um, maybe they'll use Guardians of the Galaxy as more of their nerd movie. The movie that they used to really appeal to comic book fans, because obviously the general public is not very familiar with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm not super familiar with the Guardians of the Galaxy, so um, maybe that'll be the movie where they, make up for make it up to, the more um, comic book knowledgeable members of the audience. So, with that said, I have to say, concluding the spoiler-free portion of the review, I'd have to say I'd give the movie probably about an 8 out of 10. I thought it was very entertaining. Um, it was a good, fun movie. And, it's definitely a good, fun summer movie. Um, so if you're looking for that and that's something you're interested in doing, I'd definitely recommend checking it out. I'd certainly recommend taking, if you have a tween in your family who is excited for the Marvel movies, I think they'll really like it. So this definitely seems like a movie that you could take your family to, if you have older children. Obviously, if you have little kids, that this probably isn't the movie for them, especially considering that it's live action and it's over 2 hours long. But again, if you have a child who's 10 and over, I think they'd really like the movie. So generally, just a good, fun movie. So that it concludes the spoiler-free portion of the video, so now we're getting into spoilers. So I'm going to talk about the plot in greater detail. So if you haven't seen the movie and you're still there and you get spoiled, that's your decision. Like, you can't complain to me. So pretty much the thoughts on the thing that I thought were cool. I was actually really surprised by what happened with the Mandarin. Because now I am not a huge Marvel comic book fan at all. Like, I don't read their comics, not necessarily because I don't like them. It's more that I don't really have a lot of access to comics. For two major reasons. One is that I've always lived in really rural areas, so I haven't lived near comic book stores, and I don't have really a lot of members of my family who are into comics, so there wasn't really somebody who I could borrow comics from. And also, I just haven't had the money to get them, so that's kind of been the two major reasons why I haven't read a lot of comics. I mean, I've read a couple comics, but just not anything from the Marvel universe. Most of the comics that I have read are indie comics, and of the superhero comics I've read Watchmen, and I've read the first issues of Action Comics #1 and Detective Comics #1 for the new DC New 52 that came out in September of 2011, I believe. So those are a lot of the mainstream superhero comics I've read. So not really anything with Marvel, but with that said, I'm familiar enough with Marvel that I know that Mandarin is Tony's big bad, and apparently they've been hinting at the Mandarin having some influences throughout the two earlier Iron Man movies. Apparently, I know in the first movie it was kind of hinted at that the terrorist group that kidnapped Tony and the other scientists, that they had some connection to the Mandarin, and that apparently the Asian security guard guy who gave Nick Nolte Nick Nolte's character his passports to get into the United States was supposed to be with the Mandarin. But what happened in Iron Man 3, as we turned out, is that Ben Kingsley's character, who was supposed to be the Mandarin, it turns out that he's an actor, and that he turns out that he's just, that at least him being the Mandarin, that he was just really a diversion to allow the actual villain of the story, who I believe is played by Guy Pearce, his character, whose name is Alderson Gillian, and so Guy Pearce's character is the real villain in the story, and that Ben Kingsley's character is just a cover. And it turns out that obviously Ben Kingsley's character is an actor who was hired by him and his firm to take on this persona of being this extremist terrorist leader who did all these bad things. And it turned out that everything he did was just an act, and so he wasn't real. And so he was just like the cover. And I was really surprised by that, because again, like the Mandarin is supposed to be like Tony's big bad, for people, for people who aren't familiar with comics, like the Mandarin is, he's Tony's Joker, or his Lex Luthor, or his Magneto, like he's Tony's big bad. And the thing is like they didn't use Mandarin at all the way he's used in the comics. And honestly, I'm not really sure why. I mean, again, the movie was really entertaining. but as a movie, but as far as a comic book movie, like it honestly fell flat. Like it really didn't do anything to move the story closer to getting to the second Avengers movie and getting us to deal with Thanos. And I mean, and Thanos is supposed to be a really, really big deal in the Marvel universe. And the thing is we didn't have anything happen that dealt with alien stuff, and that would have made sense. I know in the comics the Mandarin, he has these 10 rings that are of alien origin, and they're essentially so technologically advanced that they might as well be magic. And the thing is that would have been cool. And and the thing is like, even if Ben Kingsley character was still, even if they used him as a cover, it still would have been cool for them to have an actual Mandarin behind Ben Kingsley, like for there to be, an actual uh, Chinese terrorist guy behind that, or just anybody. Like, the interesting thing about Guy Pearce's character is that he does have superpowers, and that his superpowers essentially give him the ability to um superheat his body so he can melt things, and he can light things on fire, and he can breathe fire. And he did this um because this genetic engineer created this, I think this type of created serum called uh crap, the externum, like, yeah, externum or something. I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, I'm sorry. um which is supposed to give the person who has it these, regenerative healing powers. And the glitch of it is that it can have the side effect of giving you, essentially, that it can give you like super heat powers. And that one of the bad things about it is, obviously, as we find out in the movie, is that if your body rejects it, that you will turn into a living bomb. And obviously and essentially throughout the movie, there's been a couple instances where there would be people who would be tested with this, and their bodies would reject the serum, and they'd explode. And so that's what Alderson Gillian, he uses the serum. So it's like it's a bio serum, and obviously it's not alien in origin. And um, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, his power was cool, and he was certainly a really cool bad guy. But you know, he at the end of the movie when he's fighting Tony, um, he claims that he is the Mandarin. And then obviously Pepper Potts ends up saving Tony from him. And the reason this happens is because Gillian kidnaps her, and he actually injects her with the serum, and she ends up getting superpowers, which give her the heat powers. Obviously, at the end of the movie, Tony cures her. Although I did think it was really cool that Pepper had the super heat powers, because those were really awesome. And it would have been cool to see her have them, but I mean, like, and Guy Pearce's character was an interesting villain, and it certainly would have been interesting to see a lot of it. And I have to say, Ben Kingsley's character was very interesting, and he was very charismatic. And honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing more of him, but you know, I think it was definitely a missed opportunity that they didn't use the Mandarin the way that they probably should have, because the thing in the comics is that the Mandarin is probably, is a character that is probably on the same level as someone like Doctor Doom or, Magneto. He's a big bad. He's one of the few really big bad characters. And honestly, I don't know why they shelved him like that. I mean, because honestly, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least was created by Marvel Studios. They don't really have a lot of um, like big bads to work with, because honestly, I think as far as you know I mean, pretty much what they did with Mandarin is like if they would have done something, if they would have tried to shelf, at this point, to shelf Loki or to shelf the Red Skull. Like, I mean, Loki and the Red Skull are very important characters to Thor and Captain America because those are their big bads. And that the Mandarin is Tony's big bad. He's his Loki, he's his Red Skull, and it just they shelved him, and like this was supposed to be the big huzzah, and it it didn't make sense to shelf him. And I mean, and I could have respected the fact that maybe they didn't want to use alien technology for the Mandarin, but like I think they should have still had the Mandarin be the Mandarin and do that stuff. Aldrich Gillian as a character, again, like I said, he was a very interesting villain, but he wasn't the villain that the Mandarin is in the comics. And I think it would have been really fun to get introduced to that in the movies. And I think one of the ways that the movies have been really great is that they've gotten a lot of people interested in characters that they weren't aware of before or that they weren't necessarily interested in before. I mean, the Iron Man movies have done so much good for the Iron Man comics and so much good for Tony Stark because they've made that character so popular. Um, and again, they've done so much for the character of Loki. Like Loki's popularity has really surged in the last couple of years because of the comics. Um, they've made the character Agent Coulson super, super, super popular. Now, I think that they actually added him to the comics because I don't think he existed in the comics prior to the movies, but I think he was so popular that they added him. And I think honestly, I don't think that this movie is going to have that effect with the Mandarin because they didn't use the Mandarin in the movie. Like they didn't take comic book Mandarin and put them in the movie like the way they took Loki. Like they actually did the opposite to the Mandarin of what they did to Loki because like in the comics, like Loki's kind of like yeah, but then like in the movies, like they made Loki really awesome. So I think they're kind of, I know I've heard some people who think that, like, a couple people, reviews who thought that they might be overusing Loki, and that might be fair. Like, sometimes if you use something that's really awesome too much, like, you take away its awesomeness. So, like, you gotta be clever about that stuff. So let's hope they use Loki wisely, because obviously if they don't, that they might do more harm to him than good. Although they've certainly done a lot of good for the character. Um, Honestly, I don't know why they did what they did with the Mandarin. Like I liked Ben Kingsley's character. He was very charismatic. And to be honest, I was kind of hoping at the end of the movie that Ben Kingsley's character wasn't an actor, that he actually was the Mandarin, but that he lied when Tony saw him, so that way he wouldn't get in trouble and that way he could sneak out of things, because who's going to who's going to suspect a drunken womanizing Englishman as as a terrorist, when you have this scientist guy who's doing evil stuff. And I felt like, wouldn't it have been cool if that if Ben Kingsley's character actually was the Mandarin, even after he said he wasn't, and that way he could use Guy Pearce's character to be his patsy, and he could just sneak out with lesser charges, because that actually would have kind of been cool. um Obviously they arrest his character at the end of the movie, Ben Kingsley character, and he just has this huge following. So yeah, I'm interested to see what more they do with him. I don't really think they're gonna do more with him, but he's interesting. I was kind of hoping that they would do that, where they would make it where Ben Kingsley's character actually was the Mandarin, and that he actually was in charge of a big giant terrorist organization, and that he simply lied to Tony, and that he actually was such an effective actor that he made Tony and Rhodey believe him, and that he let Guy be his patsy like that. I think that would have been cool. Um, but they didn't do that. So, and apparently, Guy Pearce's character is the Mandarin, because he's got like the dragon tattoos and stuff. So, um, maybe they'll bring him back, and maybe we'll see more of this man, like the movie version of Mandarin. But like the movie version of Mandarin isn't anything like the comics. So yeah, so this movie definitely wasn't an effective comic book adaptation movie because of that. I don't think anybody came in there honestly, I expected Mandarin to be this really big huge deal, because they made him be this really huge big deal, and then it turned out that it was all a bunch of made up stuff, which was kind of disappointing. Um, One thing that I felt was kind of disappointing is um the scene where Tony gets all of his suits together, and they end up fighting against Guy Pearce's character, and we see a little bit of this in the trailer. And when I saw that in the trailer, what I assumed would happen, because it wasn't apparent in the trailer that Tony could remote control the suits, was that I expected that Tony had gotten a bunch of allies together, and that they were wearing the suits, and they were piloting the suits. So I figured that there were people in them, and I figured that Tony had gotten a couple allies. I obviously uh, figured Rhodey would be one of them, and that maybe Pepper was piloting one, maybe, and that maybe Happy Hogan was who's Jon Favreau's character, might have been you know piloting one, and maybe Tony throughout the movie might have made a couple other allies, that could have been used in his universe, and that they were fighting the Mandarin. And I think that would be kind of cool, because that would imply a lot of character growth for Tony, because I think one of the biggest problems Tony has had in the first two Iron Mans is that he's a lone wolf. He doesn't really like to work with people, and it kind of would have been cool right off the Avengers for him to get over that and to be more willing to work with people. And obviously that's not what happens in that scene. It turns out it's just him and Rhodey, but Rhodey's got his own suit, and all those Iron Man suits are just being remote controlled. So essentially they're just giant robots, which is cool, but I kind of think that defeats the purpose of Tony being around, because, I think one of the reasons why Iron Man is intriguing is because it's not a giant robot. It's Tony wearing a robot suit. He's wearing a mech suit, but it's still a guy controlling it. And I guess the fact that they're just robots, just battle robots, kind of takes away a little bit from it. Um, so that was, I mean, that was certainly a cool scene to watch, but it was still kind of disappointing because of it what happened didn't happen the way I would have expected it to. Um, Although it was cool that Pepper Potts got superpowers, so that was cool, but they took them away, which wasn't really cool. And um, and another thing that was interesting about the movie, but that they really didn't do anything to deal with this in any capacity, was that throughout the movie, Tony has been having panic attacks because of his experiences um, in the Avengers movie, where he went up into the wormhole and then his suit went out of power, and then obviously he came out and he fell to the earth. So he was having panic attacks throughout the movie for that, but that was not really ever dealt with, so that was interesting. Um, so yeah, so I think I have to say and obviously, at the end of the movie, Tony gets surgery, so he has the shrapnel taken out of his heart, and he takes the arc reactor out. And at the end of the movie, he throws it over the cliff of the rubble of his house, because obviously his house got destroyed because he threatened the Mandarin, and the Mandarin rose to the occasion, although it was Alderson Gillian and not Ben Kingsley. So that happened. And again, like I said, it was a very entertaining movie as far as an action summer blockbuster movie goes. Obviously, as a comic book movie, I didn't do so awesome. So, and obviously, the scene at the end of the credits, it turned out that he was just talking to Mark Ruffalo's character. So he's talking to Bruce Banner, and he's telling him the story about the movie. So he's telling Mark Ruffalo's character pretty much the story of everything we just saw. And I have to say that was probably a weak ending stuff, because I know we're not gonna get a Hulk movie, and I don't know if Mark Ruffalo's character is supposed to really do anything significant in any of these movies. Maybe he is. Maybe the ending credit will be more cool as time goes on. We'll have to see. So, I think with that said, I think I pretty much talked about everything that I wanted to talk about and that I thought was cool. So, alright, so with that said, again, I will give Iron Man 3 an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a very entertaining movie. It was nice to watch, very fun comedic movie. I think obviously again, if you're a comic book fan, you're expecting, the Mandarin to be this really big badass and be really pivotal. Unfortunately, you're probably gonna be kind of disappointed. And I think to any of you guys who came in there expecting a lot different stuff, I hope you guys weren't too disappointed. I know I've watched a couple reviews from comic book readers who watched the movie who were a little less than thrilled. So, hope you guys weren't too disappointed. I know a lot of people probably were going to be, especially from what I was talking about earlier in the review with the trailer. The trailer's very misleading to what happens in the movie, and that's unfortunate. So, I hope you guys weren't too disappointed. Sorry if you were. So with that said, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts about the movies. Now, if you're gonna leave spoiler comments, at least let people know before you say anything that they're gonna spoil stuff, since the movie's only been out for a couple days. So I don't think, I don't think quite everybody ran out and saw it. So, But with that said, again, I'd really like to hear what you guys say, your thoughts on the movie and stuff that you thought were cool. I mean, what did you think about the things with the Mandarin and what happened with the movie? Um, and tell me like other movies that you're excited to see for the summer, since there's a lot of movies coming out and quite a few really cool movies. Obviously, we have Man of Steel to look forward to later this summer. I'm definitely looking forward to that. Hopefully, I'll go see that in theaters. So with that said, make sure you guys comment, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.